Well, good evening and thank you for joining us. Well, let me right at the outset address the issue about which they seem to have cut down a whole forest to provide newspaper. It is everywhere, the New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian. I suppose there are some who salivate and in a perverse sort of way enjoy the kind of voyeurism that we've seen in the last 24 hours in relation to Gladys Berejiklian. Let me say up front that while I have known Gladys Berejiklian for a long time, I have not supported her response or the federal government's response or the Queensland or the Victorian or the lockout king in WA. I can't support the alarmism and fear that these political leaders have generated and the economic havoc, of course, that they've brought. Without labouring the point, we must never forget that these politicians are wrong, capital W wrong, blaming the virus for the recession we are in, blaming the virus for destroying businesses and jobs and lives. As Terry McCrann splendidly says today, quote, the virus hasn't sacked a single worker. The virus hasn't closed a single business. It is what politicians have ordered to supposedly fight the virus which has done all of that. Well, I've argued this from day one. We are where we are in an economic quagmire because of human beings, their decisions and their dreadful judgment. Which brings me back to the Premier of New South Wales, Gladys Berejiklian. Whatever she has or hasn't done, her private life is no business of ours. It is our business if, as an elected representative, she has allowed her private life to interfere with the responsible exercise of her elected responsibilities. But to date, there's no proof of that. But this is where I say yet again, it's not Berejiklian who should be on the rack, but ICAC itself. As they say in that cliche, she's been hoisted on her own petard. I can't remember how many times I've sought publicly to persuade government to reform the whole ICAC machinery in New South Wales. The ICAC Code of Conduct needs to be torn up. This is an outfit which withholds exculpatory evidence. It's an outfit known to leak like a sieve. It's an outfit that thrives on the blood sport of destroying the reputations of high-profile people. Ask the former Emergency Services Commissioner, Murray Keir. ICAC found him corrupt. Subsequently, a magistrate demolished the credibility of ICAC. Yet I venture to say that there are people at a corner store who will still look sideways at Murray Keir. Ask the gifted former Deputy Senior Crown Prosecutor Margaret Cunneen. She went all the way to the High Court to clear her name of ICAC damage and invention. Ask the former MP Ian McDonald or the union leader John Maitland. They went to jail over the granting of a coal exploration licence, ICAC inspired. They've had their convictions overturned. They appealed the verdict. The conviction was quashed by the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal. A retrial has been ordered. Ask Sharif Kazal, branded corrupt by ICAC, completely innocent. Now, Gladys Berejiklian has had any number of requests based on findings by reputable judges in relation to the innocence of Kazal, yet he appears on the ICAC website as being corrupt. The former acting ICAC inspector, he was the person who's to check all these people out, the former Judge John Nicholson found the ICAC treatment of Kazal was typical. He said evidence in support of him was never aired. ICAC refused to accept numerous assessments of the Kazal case by the New South Wales DPP, which concluded there was insufficient evidence to prosecute Mr Kazal. Now, Gladys knew all of this and she's done nothing. A 2015 review of ICAC by the then ICAC inspector, the late David Levine, recommended the establishment of an exoneration protocol to allow people found corrupt by ICAC but not convicted in the courts to have their names removed from ICAC's website. Michael Baird, when he was Premier, gave the assurance. He said, quote, if anyone's been wronged by ICAC, ICAC will be held accountable. Nothing happened. Gladys promised in 2018, our ICAC committee, that's the Parliament ICAC committee, is looking at ways in which we can ensure that people who've been through the process and exonerated somehow get justice. Nothing's happened. Ask what justice was dished out to the very fine Police Minister, Michael Gallagher. Innocent. Reputation trashed by ICAC. Gladys and her colleagues abandoned him. ICAC won. Bart Bassett, the immensely decent man, was a budding political candidate. He became a headline too. Too late. He was found not to be corrupt, yet transcripts of ICAC's Operation Spicer, which state false information about Bart Bassett, remain on ICAC's website. No apology. Don't bother to correct the record. His reputation trashed. Marie Fakara, another good woman, another reputation trashed in the public place. Innocent. No apology. No compensation. And where's this poor chap, John Sidoti? He's still being investigated by ICAC a year after the investigations began. a former New South Wales sports minister. He's apparently in trouble because he amassed a $41 million property portfolio while he held parliamentary positions. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Oh, of course he got his money by exercising his parliamentary influence. I don't think so. I've never known a more honest man. But his reputation? He'd been hung out to dry. And no indication when this ICAC mob will be finished with him. We learned that ICAC, this wonderful architect of injustice, has no time frame for the Sidoti investigation. Which brings us back to Gladys Berejiklian, who, as Premier, should have done what her predecessors didn't do, fix this mess up. But what we heard yesterday, and with all these people I've mentioned and others I haven't, this stuff should never be in the public place until evidence is heard and charges can be levelled. Until then, we're living in a world of gossip, revelations, voyeurism, and the trashing of reputations. Gladys Berejiklian is a broken and lonely figure. Her mistake seems to be that she found love. It hasn't worked out. It's got nothing to do with us, unless there's clear proof that her personal life interfered with her political responsibilities. And it is the right, indeed it is essential, that an independent body, truly independent, establishes whether that happened. But those hearings should happen in camera, not in the public place, where every titillating story about her is documented page by page and minute by minute. Gladys Berejiklian is but the latest victim of this process. Who'll be next? I'll say it for the umpteenth time. You don't need to be too smart to know where the corruption lies. What we are witnessing again is a corruption of process. Now, it's not what Gladys Berejiklian has or has not done that may well finish her off. The headlines may have already done that. It is a rotten system, masquerading as justice. And Gladys, now that you've seen what this process has done to you, use your endeavours to do belated justice to those who've been wronged by ICAC in the past. You know who they are? Yesterday, you proclaimed your innocence of wrongdoing, and many believe you. Many also believe that the other personal stuff is no business of ours. But I ask you again, now, do belated justice to those whose reputations have been destroyed by ICAC, and as with New Coal shareholders, whose wealth has been confiscated. Do belated justice to them.